Selamat pagi, Bu Irin. Selamat datang
Selamat
di
pagi, Mbak Ibu Isti. Mohon maaf saya off kamera ini karena saya ada di jalan.
Oke, terus Bu Irin sudah menyempatkan bergabung ini, Bu.
Sama-sama, saya juga terima kasih ini mendapatkan ilmu baru.
Ada Bu Patmi juga ini ya.
Iya, saya lihat tadi ada Bu Patmi juga.
Assalamualaikum Bu Patmi.
Bu Isti, sudah lebih jelas?
Jelas kok Pak suaranya.
Nggih, matur nuwun.
Oke.
Barusan beliau telepon saya sedang coba masuk kok belum bisa gitu. Mau nyoba lagi. Baik, terima kasih nih Bapak-Bapak, Ibu-ibu dan para mahasiswa dan hadir. Mbak Sahla sudah ada CV beliau ya Mbak ya?
Sudah Pak untuk CV.
Ya, baik, terima kasih. Oh, beliau sudah masuk. Minta tolong dijadikan co-host Mas Daru. Good morning, Mr. Dad. Your voice still mute. Please unmute. Yes.
Can you hear my voice?
Yes, clearly. Thank you very much. Good morning, Dr. Dad.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine.
Good morning, everyone.
So, Dr. Dad, I would like to introduce you here, mostly our students, but there are several lecturers also attend this meeting.
Yes.
The first one is Ibu Dr. Isti Handayani. Ibu
Good morning.
She is the secretary of the Department of.
Good morning, Dr. Tien Dat.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And then Ibu Dr. Pepita Haryanti. She is the head of study program of food technology.
Good morning, Dr. Pepita. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dad.
Thank you very much.
Several lecturers, Ibu Ais, Dr. Aisyah, Dr. Karseno, Dr. Poko, and then also another lecturers, our good friends from Surabaya, ya Bu Isti.
Yeah.
They also attend because they really curious about your presentation.
Yeah.
But mostly the participants are our bachelor students. Therefore, please explain according to bachelor standard. Therefore, they will understand about your explanation.
Thank you.
Okay, maybe next 2 minutes we will start officially our event.
Sure. Thank you very much. So good morning, everyone. So very nice to be here, and that's a great honor that the invitation from Dr. Conroe for the guest lecture this morning. So that yeah, the purpose is mainly we share the experience with the students, and then of course we can also can share respective the discussion later with the on lecturers. And I see that many familiar names as the authors, and also reviewers for the IOB proceeding that I currently handling. And that's nice to be here and say thank you all of you. Especially I see the name like Handi Yani, EC. I see send, I believe that 2 papers. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Arseno,
Yeah, as you
is
know.
one of the reviewer. And I would like to inform you that the MC and the moderator are our students.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm so happy. It's a nice event for them to train their capability, because we will have a very special presenter from the Vietnam.
Yeah.
Dr. Dat, can you teach us to pronounce your name correctly?
My name is actually is my you can call my surname is Huynh, but normally in Vietnam just call me Dat. Yeah, that one.
Okay.
Yeah, short,
It's-
easy, convenient,
Yes.
and friendly. So Dat. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
And then,
So thank you very much. Ibu Isti, may we start the guest lecture now?
yeah, sure. So I try to
Okay.
open the file and share the screen.
Okay. Wait, we will do a short speech for the opening of this event, Mr.
All
Dr.
right.
Dat. Yeah. So, Fatih, please.
Oke. Thank you, Pak Condro. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. The Honorable Mr. Tien Dat Huynh, Ph.D. from Nong Lam University, Vietnam. The Honorable Mrs. Dr. Pepita Haryanti, Head of Department of Food Teknologi, Universitas Jenderal Soedirman. The Honorable Lecturer of the Department of Food Teknologi. And what I'm proud of is all the food technology students and all of the participants. On behalf of my institution, I am very pleased to give you a warm welcome to International Guest Lecture. I would also like to express my sincere gratitude to Mr. Tien Dat Huynh, Ph.D. from the Department of Nutrition and Biochemistry, Faculty of Food Science and Technology, Nong Lam University, Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, who spend your time to share your knowledge and experience, especially in the topic of healthy food product. Good morning, Mr. Tien.
Yeah, good
Nice
morning.
to
Yeah.
meet you.
Nice to meet you, and
Okay.
nice to meet you all. Thank you very much for your briefly introduction about the session this morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I believe your speech will bring significant contribution to all participants.
Right, that's a really nice opportunity for me, and also to meet you all and your students in
Okay.
sharing some aspect regarding to food science and technology.
Okay.
All right, so in shortly, I will have just a sharing slide about 45 to 50 minutes, and then we have some time for discussion.
Okay, thank you. And for all participants, I hope that you will experience a fruitful and inspiring meeting. and leave the virtual meeting with enlarged horizon and knowledge. Okay, thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Yeah. So Fatih, please.
All right, sir. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good morning and welcome to Jenderal Soedirman University. It is an honor for me to inform you that among us here we have in our presence His Excellency Dr. Tien Dat Huynh, the lecturer at Department of Nutrition and Biochemistry from Nong Lam University, His Excellency Mrs. Pepita Haryanti, the head of Food Technology Study Program, His Excellency Mrs. Isti Handayani, the Secretary of Food Technology Study Program, and the Honorable to all lecturers in the faculties and universities board that I cannot mention one by one. Before we proceed, I would like to kindly ask to all attendees to please turn off your mic who has no interest to talk in the forum. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Muhammad Fatih Abdurrahman. I'm a food technology undergraduate student from agriculture faculty. And today I will be your master of ceremony for today's event. For our main agenda today, there will be a public lecture that will be led by a moderator. But before we proceed to it, I'd like to introduce you our great moderator. She is Ms. Shahla Salsabila. Hello, Ms. Shahla. So shortly, she was an undergraduate from food technology in Jenderal Soedirman University, and now she is a postgraduate food technology student in Jenderal Soedirman University too. Okay, maybe for saving time, without any further ado, for Ms. Shahla, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mas Fatih. First of all, good morning, distinguished participants for today's class, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shahla Salsabila, or simply you may call me Shahla, as moderator for today's class with the topics of the role of advanced food science and technology in development of healthy food product. Before we begin our discussion today, I would like to introduce furthermore about our speaker, Mr. Tien Dat Huynh, Ph.D. He graduated as a Doctor of Science, majoring food science and technology in 2017 from University of New South Wales, Sydney. Aside from that, Dr. Dat also awarded the Australian Postgraduate Award during 2013 until 2016, Best Oral Presentation Prize from University of New South Wales in 2014, second prize on postgraduate presentation by Asian Food Conference in 2011, also awarded the Australian Government Scholarship Awards between 2009 until 2011. Dr. Dat has so many teaching experiences, both in Nong Lam University, International University, University of Technology and Education in Ho Chi Minh City, University of Science and Technology of Hanoi, also University of New South Wales, Sydney. Dr. Dat currently awarded research grant from Ministry of Education and Training in 2020 until 2022 with topic of apply freeze concentrate methods to produce high quality lime juice and lime juice powder. His latest publication in 2021 regarding quality parameters of lime in Long Arm province from Journal of Science, Kanto University, and also in 2021, starch recovery from turmeric powder after ethanol curcumin extraction in comparison to the conventional methods from Journal of Agriculture and Development. So without further ado, let's greet our great lecturer today. Good morning, Mr. Dr. Dat. How are you, sir?
Good morning. So I'm good. Thank you very much for your very details in the introduction to my CV. Okay, thank you very much for your very well preparation on this morning session, and also thank you very much for Patty for your participate and introduce for the session this morning as well. And yeah, that's a great honor to be here, to share some key points regarding to healthy food development using the knowledge in the science and technologies currently that I update on myself. And then it could be later we can sharing some experience regarding to this. And that's great to be here and meet the academics and some staff from the Faculty of Food Technology, and also a lot of students involved in interesting in the topic. And thank you very much for that before the lecture. So it's called the lecture, but it's just a very short one. Should be around 75 slides, but I try myself within the time frame. So yeah, I think that yours, Sarah. Yeah.
Okay, so before we begin, I would like to explain the timeline for today's class, sir. So first of all, you might have 45 until maybe 50 minutes to do the presentation. And then after that, we will do the discussion with the students. So maybe for all the participants who might want to ask or have a question, you might directly ask the question after the presentation ends, or you may write down the question in the chat box. So I will read it after the presentation ends. So, okay, so to cut this, maybe Dr. Dat may begin the presentation now. The time's yours.
So I think for the questions, I think I need your help, Sarah. So it means that the question can send to the chatting box, and after that you can select your some questions regarding to that, and I can answer after that. So yeah, you can save time for the later. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, thank you. So within a few seconds, I will share the screen. Okay. So I would like to open this the lecture first, and thank you very much. Just one, please. All right, so can you see the slide right now on the screen?
Yes, Dr. Dat, you may begin.
All right, so maybe I stop my video during my share so that I can make the connection be better. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and my respective students from the UNSOED. So this morning topic, we mentioned about the topic regarding to that requires requirements currently in the trends of the healthy food. So today I share some experience in the food science and technology we can use in the development of the healthy food products, and also some concept involved in the Asia countries like Vietnam and also from Indonesia also can be shared during this short slides. Okay, so the first topic I mentioned about that should be about talk about the trans fat, and we deal with some health problem regarding to the trans fat, and also we think about how to play that, and we deal with some technological difficulties, and then what is the technique that we try to use to solve this problem, and later on involved in the salt research and how to reduce the salt in the food products. And the next topic involved in the dairy milks that we aim to reduce for the allergies during like using up the dairy milk. And finally, some like very specific food involved in using up the gluten, and we try to use something else rather than like gluten, like from animal products. So that's the four main part I can share regarding to this. So please leave your question in the chat box, and later on we can discuss later. So Dr. Shailas will assist me in the select for the question for discussion later. So first, we talk about the trans fat free first. So just think about like, you know, why we choose the topic like healthy food and then involved in the trans fat. And we see that like trans fat, actually we already know about like this trans fat is quite well, but actually that the series of the scenario is quite important to mention here. So in here we see that like we see that this one that from the WHO regarding to the report how to report on the death rate of the several countries involved, and you see that like for Indonesia also here. So we see that like they report in the charts that like also the very high rate of the death every year regarding to like, you know, involved in using of the trans fat, and that's the reason why. So the first topic involved here, and this one in more details in the sharing of the like, you know, countries that joining for the trans fat free or elimination from the diet. We see that like from we notice on the Southeast Asia region, and see that only Thailand so far, and some other like involved in Singapore that you know close to us, you know, like Vietnam and Indonesia don't have in this list. It means that our country actually we have like, you know, should we have the future national strategy how to reduce for the trans fat. It should be take place. For Thailand 2023, that like they commit to reduce of the trans fat, and Singapore as well, but not like in Vietnam and Indonesia, and that should be like, you know, noticed in the later on it can big change in the food industries. So just very briefly for students to take the information why the trans fat we apply in the food industry. So you see that like in the configuration, it's just like this one, the cis configuration that like the double bonds here that like making the compound become kink, but this one is straighter and make like the compound is more suitable for the food industry rather than this guy. So the cis configuration is good for health, but this one is not very good for industry application. This one is better for the industrial application, but they can cause the problem, and that's the reason why I mentioned about today. So some information is why trans fat is a problem. So we have the trans fat is a problem because they can overall they can increase the low density lipoprotein cholesterol, and also like decrease in the HDL in the cholesterol, so high density lipoprotein. So this one is a good lipoproteins that involved in the heart disease, and this one the bad guys. So in general, so we can see that like the trans fat can increase for the bad guys and decrease for the good guy, and that reason why so the trans fat is not very good for our diet, and then like involved in later health problems and involved in some heart disease, cardiovascular disease later on. So the second reason they can also involve in the trans fat is that they can call for the weight gain. So they can increase in the fat body mass and reduce in the lean body mass in the percentage. And so that reason why we need to reduce this one in the diet. See that the third reason that involved in the trans fat, they can increase in the risk of the type 2 diabetes that become the prevalence globally, and also they decrease in insulin sensitivity. That is one, the number 4 and number 3 that involved in the type 2 diabetes that involved in the chronic disease. Also like the prevalence very high, found both in Indonesia and also in Vietnam. So in the general, so the trans fat compared to the saturated fat, so the trans fat we see that like they reduce the good and they increase the bad, and so that like the profile effect of the trans fat, you know, actually it's more effect negatively to the health rather than like the saturated fat. So we see that the saturated fat is some fighting, they can increase in the good cholesterol, but also like increase in the bad cholesterol. So it's quite, you know, mixed in the fighting related to the saturated fat, but the trans fat is totally reduced in the good guys and, you know, increase in the bad cholesterol. Okay, so something involved in the where we can find the trans fat. So firstly, that naturally occurring in the food diet. So they can be found less than 20% consumed in this form, which means that like normally we consume in another form. So it's found about 2 to 5% in the animal fat and trans fat. That not likely in the dairy products and some fat. So why we need to use for the trans fat and where we can find the trans fat. So here I highlight for the manufacturers products. Okay, so involved in the industrial processing. So we call that the process. We call that the hydrogenation of the fat. So so the process here just briefly mentioned for the student that like some of the oils and fat they contain like a lot of like double bonds, and the double bonds are actually not stable. It can be easily to be oxidized, and then less stable. It can change the flavor and also the shelf life of the oil and the fat. And the reason why in the industry they try to do the process, it means add the hydrogen into the fat, into the double bonds. We call that the hydrogenated fat. Okay, and they can be applied in the softenings. They can apply in margarines and pastries, cookie, crackers, and some snack food and fried foods, and some many other like convenient food and soup and gravy, mixed salad dressing, and candy. So this one is all the food items that we can find in the diet. All right, so just briefly about the hydrogenation. This means that the process we add, the more of the hydrogen in. But during adding that, we unintentionally we generate for some like trans fat in our diet. Okay, and then that some oil they declare that like partially hydrogenated oils that may be contained for the trans fat, and most likely they found in the processed food and not in the much in the natural food. So this was some like comparison about the where we can find from the trans fat. In here we see that like we can find a lot in the margarines, and also the second one is you can find in the liquid of softening and some butter. So these products apply quite a lot, and not only about like domestic cooking, but also in the industrial application, example like in the cookies industry and some other softening purposes. All right, so why we use the hydrogenated fats, we already know. So let's briefly mention about, firstly, we mentioned about that enhancing for the shelf life. It means that for the industry application is not only about like, you know, how to generate for the delicious food, but also like how they can reserve the oil, frying oils for later use. It means that like we call that the shelf life of the frying oils. So they try to make the liquid oil into the solid one, and they're able to play for some butter purposes and softenings. Okay, and during the shortage of the butter from the dairy products, they also can be significant source to replace for the butter. And also just think about the scenario in Vietnam and in Indonesia, when also we not very have big industry in the dairy product, and then like butter maybe not very popular. Another purpose using of the trans fat that it can decrease in the browning during the cooking and cheaper than the butter. So how much we can use the trans fat in that is okay. So the recommendation is that as little as possible, and so recommendation is so far that like totally eliminated from the diet. But in the America, they allow about 2.5 grams per day they can consume. It means that like if less than 2.5 grams per day, it's okay. That from American Heart Association recommendation. But the general concept, the general message that's sent to us is that like eliminate from the diet. That is the good way to maintain for the health regarding to like this kind of the fat. So where we can find trans fats in the restaurant food. You see this food is familiar to you? Kamu suka ayam goreng? So in this one, you see that like, you know, like a lot of food like which can find in the restaurants, and also it's just like domestic restaurant, but also just think about in industrial scale where we can find some cake and some cookies and some other food that can be sold, you know, like separately in the food items in the large scale of industry. So where we can find the declaration of the fat, of the trans fat in the labels. So you can see that like if you're looking for the international items or in your language, you can find very similar terms of the partially hydrogenated vegetable oils or hydrogenated oils. So these mean that they contain for the trans fat. But in here, you know, like sometimes they declare that 0 trans fat, but it seems that like it's not like any they containing for the partial hydrogenated vegetable oil and fat. They also can contain for the trans fat. Some of them they declare in the nutritional fact involved in example here that like they say that 2.5 grams of trans fat. And in the US and many of the European countries, they already focus on the trans fat free. It means that like in the future, the Thailand already ahead of this, but like in Vietnam and Indonesia, we also can follow the way that they can reduce trans fat into the trans fat free product. But they need to shift from the industry from the normal fat to replace for the trans fat. Is that the challenge? So in the short summary of this one is that see that like most of the trans fat we consume is artificial. That like almost like 80% that artificial, and only around like 20% that occur naturally. So that like when we consume for any item that belong to industry and belong to like the processed food, so care about like, you know, the artificial trans fat that can be available in that for food products. Okay, so that like this one the listing of like several items of the food that contain trans fat from US. So in the Indonesia, maybe later academics and technical staff in the food industry may be involved in identify what kind of the food product is significant contribute into the trans fat diets for the Indonesian people, and maybe we have later on we have a research to reduce for the trans fat. So that should be nice later on. We can like collaborate in research opportunity later. So replacing trans fat is actually that from the other Western countries, they say that like it's feasible, and the way that they can do is that like replace for the partial hydrogenated vegetable oil into the other regular vegetable oils, or maybe new developed of the trans fat free frying oil, so that like can increase for the frying life. It means the frying shelf life. So the vegetable shortening and margarine also they can be shipped into reformulation shortening and other margarines, and so little or less or no trans fat. So and also we can read the label in the declaration. So the cake, the cracker, pastry, cookies, and pies and hamburger buns also they can be replaced by the food development later. So it means that like some of properties of trans fat is very dedicated for their products, but also they are cheap in the price, so that like they apply quite a lot in industry. To replace that should be more research so that they can become more feasible. Some fries oil for the French fries, chicken nuggets, and some fish and other products like donuts, example, they also can be replaced by the regular oils and some other new developed trans fat formulation. So we think about the technical challenges regarding to how to replace for the trans fat. Is that like if we're using the liquid oil, is that easy? That least challenge. But then the most challenge involved in the tailor of the shortening. It means that like how we develop for the new shortening with the properties that we require for industry and also like recognized by the customer that it's healthy but like not changed in the food properties. That's a problem. So that's some identify some key points regarding to like the challenges that increasing in the challenging for reformulation of products involved in recognized by the customer. So customer wants seamless reformulation. It means that they try to develop, they require the development of the food industry that like we develop for the new trans fat, or we call that like the trans fat free method alternative, but they keep like, you know, like the seamless. It means that it means not much change in the taste, the functionality, appearance, and some other properties. So that like is actually they contribute some involved in the industry application. So that requirement from the customer is that like very similar with the trans fat containing product, but then the similar price. So that also like the industry deal with this because like making the new products that like with similar properties like the trans fat containing is not easy and maybe affect to the price. So one example that we can method involved in reducing the trans fat and trans fat free. This one they apply in the already quite a lot in the industry in Malaysia. And we see that in the future in the, we can learn lecture from them. Okay, so we can like make the more healthier food involved in the trans fat free. So the first method that involved in that formulate by blending of the palm oils. So I believe that the palm oil also available in Indonesia, but we can, most of the palm oil used in industry is containing for some trans fat as well. But we can doing the reformulation by blending with some others. We can reduce for the trans fat and reduce for the, they can rich in the saturated fatty acid. So the method involved into here, actually we just like, you know, have like to tie up the oils and we can blend into the tank. And after that, like we got like the new one. So this one is, we can do that. And this one is quite feasible for the industry. So this one is some viable approach to meet for this one is that we can like change the alternative. We can get like nutritional targets and then some label limitation. And also like some cost constraint and flavor and stability. You can optimize the products by blending. So the first method is almost about choosing appropriate rate of liquid oils and blending process. So the second method that normally they can use in the industry that they can do the modify of the oils by the esterification. And we can use this method by using the chemically and or using the enzymes to do the esterification of the fat and oil. So in general, we got the origins, and after that we reduce with the substitute the fatty acid in there, so that we can replace for in the backbone of the glycerol here can be substituted by another fatty acid with our purpose. Is that like very similar with like the trans fat containing, but healthier for our diet. So briefly about the chemical esterification of the process. So it means that like using it, we're using the some original fats and oil, and then we got like some catalyst involved in breaking of the fatty acid between. You see that two kind of the fat and oil, and after that they can be replaced in the backbone of the glycerol, and so that we can generate for the new one and various of the new form mixture. They can give some properties, and our process we need to optimize so that we can choose which one is the best one for food application. The enzymatic esterification also involved in using the hydrolysis of some lipase, and then we hydrolyze for the bonding between the fatty acid, the ester bond between the fatty acid and the glycerol, and after that we replace by the new one. So two-step process. The first one is we replace, we hydrolyze the bonding first, and after that, like we replace by the new one. So we can like hydrolyze on outer layers of the triglyceride, or we can like hydrolyze on that, and after that we assemble for the new fatty acid in. So the third method that involved in more interesting and easier for application that like we can choose some plant sterol. So some plant sterol they very similar structure with the cholesterol, and this one also like another benefits. So some plant sterol after replaced for the fat, they can become like very similar with the trans fat, but also they have the problem is that like they can solve the problem of the cholesterol from the diet. It means that the concept is that like we see that this one the cholesterol and this one is some like plant sterol. So it means that very similar in the structure, and then during the absorption, so this one they can compete with the receptor with the cholesterol. It means they can reduce for the absorption of the cholesterol from the diet. So that other like benefits of like using a plant sterol for making the product like the shortening and some butters replacing. So this one is some application of the plant sterol that can produce for the trans fat-free margarines, mayonnaise, cooking oil, and some other cheese, butter, and some shortening by substitute for the saturated and trans fat in the diet. And another application that involved in dry soup and dry sauces. Okay, so we can like I believe that this one the cube that also available in Indonesia and also very similar in Vietnam. A cooking concept, we can buy this one from the supermarket, but this one is the key application of the shortening and some fat and oil involved in the product for the dry soup and dry sauces. Some spread and stick margarine we can using the fat free, they can mix with the 10% of saturated fat and 80% of unsaturated fat to replace for the healthier food. And we can apply in the a lot of oils, example the olive oil, canola oils, and some other palm oils can be involved in, even like the coconut oils. So for the margarine and shortening industry, so we can using the blending. The formula here we see that blend up the about 25 to 75% of liquid oils and some other like 25 to 75% of fully hydrogenated oils rather than like partially. So it means that we can replace them. So the purpose of this one is we try to use the fully the hydrogenated oils, means that we completely convert them into the saturated fat, and we can blend with some liquid oil that they contain some of the unsaturated fat, and then they can mix the formula that better for the use in the industry application. Okay, so other bakery fat they can replace in the fatty acid that bearing the C16 to 22 saturated fatty acid. That's one longer and have like better in the stability during application in the products. And this one is recommended by the WHO that by 2023, which means next year, that like around like more than 40 countries that involved in reduction in the trans fats in the diet. So problem with the trans fat free. So I give like several problems that example we're using from palm oil paste. It can be sensitive to temperature change, and shortening from palm oil can become harder in the winter and softer in the summer. So maybe in our countries, example like in tropical country, maybe not affect much. We can apply these, but in other Western country is a problem. So solution we can store in the appropriate temperature, so that they can prevent for some disadvantages of this kind of the trans fat free shortening. So in here that they involve in the using of the palm-based baking margarines, also develop of some off flavor. So off flavor here that involve in some like unexpected smell that available in the product. Example like sweet roll and some cake, so that like not referred by the customer. So solution we can use that like we can like add some butter flavor in, so that they can like become stronger flavor or masking up the flavor available in the rolls or maybe in the cakes. So some trans fat free product we call that a replacement, and so problem is that have like quite shorter in the shelf life, and that the application industry may be limited, because if they have the shorter shelf life, it means that the industry maybe deal with the problem with the they maybe waste more of the trunk fast replacement by not by pass through the expiry date. So solution for this one is just recommend like purchase in smaller quantities and more quantities of the products. So some pre-make of the dough mixed with the trunk fast free material also to stiff to roll out. It means that it's not applicable in the bakery industry. So the solution they can be put in the chill temperature first, so they can see that the chill dough they can sit for room temperature for long enough to become like soft to work. So that like after that we can like roll out easier. Some sugar cookies also we come to crisp or with the trunk fast replacement. We expect some sweet taste from the texture from the cookies, but then like to crisp is not very good. So the solution is that like we try to apply from adjustment from baking times and the temperature and the slight moderation in the baking time, so that the optimization of the using of the baking condition should be the control for the problems. So the layer here we call that the icing. So sometimes it may become like collapse, and then that like containing some off flavors. And so that like maybe not very preferable by the industry. So solution they can apply here, they can choose the supplier that can minimize the off flavor effects. So maybe in the high quality supplier. Another problem is that freshly prepared butter creams, they can freshly use, but like overnight they can lose in the volume because that the oil off occur. I mean the oil running out. So they can add some emulsifier and they can produce for the better stability of the volume and can extend for within the days. Okay, some other problem involved in over mixing also can cause for the breakdown of the icing layer here. So if over mixing, that I not recommend. So that like we need to adjust for the optimization of the mixing times. So and also involved in the low speed, so that I can keep the icing layer can be stable. Some problem with the donut frying oils, they can lead to very greasy, bitter taste of the donut. So we can use the fresh oil in the proper frying. We can solve problem, but like also involved in the difficulty how to extend in the frying oils shelf life. That also required from the industry. So that the first part that involved in it's quite long for the trunk fat free. So the second one involved in the salt reduction. So so also the problem involved in the food product. So if I too much salt in the food product, they can cause for the problem. So what kind of problem we can find in? So for the students, so you can see that like if the high salt intake, they can involve in the problem with the kidney and also involve in the some vascular smooth muscle that involve in contributing to the high blood pressure. So for the kidney, they can increase for the reabsorption of the salt and then they keep the volume of the fluid volume in the blood is high. So that like they can call for the high blood pressure. For too much of the salt, they can involve in the constriction in the cells lining on the blood vessel, so that they can call for another profile effect into the high blood pressure. And also that also can affect into some steroid hormone involved in stimulate for the kidney and also stimulate for the constriction, and that lead to the high blood pressure. So in general, too much salt, high blood pressure, and this one involved in heart disease. Okay, so to reduce for the salt in the food diet, and we should understand some of the stage of the how to release for the flavor in the food matrix. So normally we have like 3 phases. So the for first stage, they can relieve from the food matrix first, and the second stage, they deliver in the oral cavity. Deliveries mean that they can spread out in the oral cavity, and later on the saltiness generation. So that three kinds of the processes involved in. So it means that if to make sure that like the body can recognize for the saltiness, the taste, it means that like we can allow for the third stage, they can become like earlier recognized by in the oral cavity, so that they can reduce in the sensation of add too much salt. So the strategy applied for the salt reduction. So the first one is applied for the gradual in reduction. It means that we know that like we refer for the salty taste, but then like just suddenly cutting down, we not really recommend because not accepted by the customer. So we can do the gradual reduction. You can apply in the domestic cooking and also like in the food industry. That very, very important to apply for the gradual reduction. So to that you not shock your customer that like lead to unacceptable of the products. So the first stage is that reduce the salt in the diet. Okay, so just reduce and reformulate for the approach, but like we do slowly. So the method here, we aim to prevent for rejection of products. Okay. And for this kind of the gradual reduction, you can maximum from application, you can reasonable in the reduction in the about 30% of the salt. And that also like a significant level. So this one can be applied for several steps, so that like if the industry try to apply, so they can like divide into many stages, and after that like for each stage they just aim to apply how much of the salt can be reduced, so that like customer cannot be recognized. But over the time, so the maximum only around like 30%, no more. Otherwise, like customer they recognize and they reject for the products containing too less salt. So the second recommendation involved in the science research involved in that we're using some substitution, that we're using some other thing involved in rather than the sodium. So normally we're using the potassium in the replace of the sodium. So we know that the potassium is good. In another one, this one like normally they in the opposite effect with the sodium. So that like we can apply replace some sodium by the potassium. But the bitter taste is a major problem involved in the calcium involved in the potassium chloride. So that like we need to overcome for the problem of the bitter taste. Maybe later on, like some research focus on how to mask the bitter taste in the potassium chloride and apply in the food products. So some combat that negative effect of bitter taste, they can apply in the they try already like using some bitter blocker they can use to apply, so that they can apply some recognize in the saltiness of the potassium, but like not in the bitter taste. Some compound example like the AMP, that the adenosine 5-monophosphate, also can be applied to block for the bitter taste receptor of recognize of the potassium. So this one already commercialized in the Western diet. And one technique is here, we try to mask up the receptors of the bitter taste of the potassiums. So the third method involved in the salt reduction, that we're using some enhancer. And some enhancer here, actually we're using very basic, that we're using some like strong seasoning, so that we can like masking the sensation of the less salt in the product. Example, in later on, we can show you, we can using some savory aroma to increase overall saltiness perception. And also we're using some other ammonium salts can provide for the taste enhancements. So the research so far they can focus in, we can using some like low salt diet, but also they can increase in the enhancement of salt intensity by more than 3 times, and they can reduce in the sodium chloride reduction more than 30%. That's interesting for the research to focus on how to using some other enhancers. And see that everyone is using some pungent stimulant added, they can add into the food. But in the Indonesian diet, can you see this? I believe that this one like sambal, is it right? And this one actually like sambal is very popular in the Indonesia. And then that also like great benefit for you later on. You can develop some product involved in adding some product involved chili or maybe like intense in the spicy taste, so that they can masking and they can enhance for the salty taste. They can recognize by the customer. So the fourth method they can apply using salt reduction, that are using the complex microstructure and to enhance for delivery profiles. So we see that like the third stage we got like 3 phases in the delivery of the salty taste, but now is we try to apply some like complex microstructure, how they can be applied. So they focus on the control of delivery. Okay, so and they focus on control of delivery in the way of more efficient. So how can we do that? So they control for the shape, the size, and the position of the salt crystal in the salt containing products, and also they make for the product become more homogeneous, or in case that like some product like inhomogeneous distribution of the salt, they can be so enhanced for the saltiness of the perception. How can they do that? Okay, so when the concept that like when the concentrate salt is more efficient in recognized in the salty taste rather than like just like spread very evenly in the food products. So that like later on they can apply in some concept involved in using the double emulsion system like water in oil in water. And in next slide we will demonstrate for you the concept. So it means that like if here that the whole products do contain for the evenly distribute of the salt, it means that like less recognized by the consumer. So we try to make like the droplet here, they contain for salt inside. So that more concentrate inside, it means that they can deliver for the droplet here more efficient in application industry for recognize of the salty taste by the customer. So that like if these they can recognize by the customer, so that I say, oh, that's salty enough, but actually they reduce in the salt concentration in total product. So the fifth one is mean that like we apply for the combination that multiple of the conduct like multimodal approaches. So that involve in like combination of the 4 methods that I already applied previously. Okay, so that so we got the concept that we can like apply. So in the industry later on, so maybe they can like useful for some academics focus on like like shifting into like more healthy food application research, so that I can reduce the salt in the Indonesian food. And the next part involved in the non-dairy milk. Okay, so so the major problem with the dairy milk is that like they call for the allergies. So that reason why we try to develop for the new product that involved in the dairy free and less allergy, but also involved in more tendency of the healthy people, they choose for the plant-based milk rather than like dairy milk from cows. So milk substitute they can refer, okay, for the one from over the milk using. So non-dairy milk alternative the very fast growing segments, mean that like they try to develop a lot in the food industry. And then the market share up to like keep going. So that's very essential for us. Later on, we can apply for these research into this market. So the main benefit of a plant-based meal substitute, they can lactose-free and cholesterol-free and low in calories. Okay, so the major problem they can deal with the non-dairy milk that like lack of nutritional balance. It means that like compared to the bovine milk, this one is the major problem. So it means that later on, if any research and any product we try to develop for the alternative of the plant-based milk, we focus on nutritional balance, please. So in some recent years, so they try to add more some micronutrients and also like make the milk become more balanced. But in Asian country, we still in developing other products. So you want the substitute? Any of you got a problem with the allergy with the cow milk? Maybe that you can choose for the plant-based milk. Okay, so plant-based milk, they can use for the allergy people with the lactose intolerance and also dietary restriction. Example, like vegan people, they are not using the animal products. And maybe like in Indonesia and also in Vietnam, we also like involved in like more people shifting into the vegans diet. So we can like avoid some potential health risks involved in antibiotics and also hormones. So allergy actually in Western countries that the major problem with the allergy, but in our countries, and I'm not sure that in Indonesia, but less likely we have more problem compared to Africa countries. So plant-based milk definition, they say that the plant-based milk alternative, they say that the fluid that result in breakdown in the size reduction of the plant material, and they look very similar with the milk. It means that the white in the color, so that the appearance and consistency should be very similar. So that like when we try to develop for the plant-based milk, it means that we need to compare not only nutritional aspect, but also appearance and the consistencies. That's the major focus when we develop for the plant-based milk. So in the past, they focused much for the soy milk. Okay, but this one is soy milk is very close to because high protein. But right now they can apply so a lot of other cereal and oil seeds and some nuts as well. You see that like a previous picture, they have quite a lot of the products. So for the non-dairy milk, we have like cereal based like oatmeal, rice, and corn milk. So these were very popular in our countries. And some legume based, example, soybean, or the peanuts, or the lupins in the Australia, or the cowpea. Some nut-based product like almond, coconut, and hazelnut, and some other walnut, example. Sesame milk, sunflowers, and also like quinoa, amara milk, also like can be focused on developed. So it depends on like what kind of the product materials available in Indonesia. Later on, you can develop for the plant-based milk. Okay, so in the Americans, 30 to 50 millions of the Americans, they can become easier to accept for the plant-based milk. But in our country is not so many products. So, and that should be like, that's a good benefits for us. Later on, we can develop for the new shipment of the products in the plant-based milk. So rice milk is very popular in the Korea, also popular in Vietnam, and they are a good choice for alternative of the non-dairy milk. So here they got a two product already commercialized in the food industry in the US, and we got the Avaloid and another from the origin that from rice and some other oat, so they can be already commercialized. So this one from oat and from rice. So see that like the color a little bit like yellowish, so we try to make like so very the powder should be very similar in the colors, slight white color like this. So rice is popular in our diet, but also maybe like good material to making for the milk. And the last one is involved in the segment we mentioned about like development of food that have some comparative texture. And in here I focus on like gelatin free, and another one is gluten free. So we apply for replace of the gelatin by starch. I believe that like many people are not like using the gelatin products from the animals, so they prefer for the using some alternative, and that also that involved in the research that focus on how to replace of the gelatin by the starch. And why we call that the starch? Because starch is very popular and cheap price. Okay, so many reasons is that like they increase in the customer group that is required for the gelatin, not required for the gelatin. So this favor, which means that they don't want to use it. So vegans and vegetarians, they don't want to eat the animal products. And some like kosher and halal standard also like they got involved in the high price of the gelatin. So that like maybe it's not applicable for some certain of the industries. So why starch? So starch is carbohydrates and very popular and in the production and also like cheap price. And we can share some properties of the gelatin can be replaced by the starch, and that reason why we can apply. And one of them is that like the gelation of the starch is very similar with the gelatin. So the native starch also can form gel, but like some modified starch also they can like increase in the property of the gelation. They can like like match for the requirement of the gelatin containing products. So that reason why the starch is modified in order to induce or enhance for certain properties, like more focus lay on the gelation. And we focus on the amylose and amylopectin. They can gel in the food containing of the starch, or that modified starch. So this is why I try to skip some like key points, just basic point of the gelation. So most likely the gelation of the starch caused by the amylose, but sometimes it can caused by the amylopectins. And in the research, they focus on the amylopectin change length that is also involved in. So elongate of amylopectin change length maybe that can reduce for some disfavor aspect of the we call that like the native starch, and then we can make some modified starch that can become better application in the place of the gelatin. So the table here, they just compare between the properties up in the gel strength and compare starch and gelatin. So we focus on using of the normal and gelatin, this one gelatin, and they generate for the forks around like more than 2,100 G Pascal. And this one is we can see that we can generate some product comparative. The example here we see that like most applicable is like involved in the alpha amylase degraded starch by the E2, which means that they apply for some amylase involved in. So it's actually they can like feasible in the replace of the gelatin by starch. Okay, so the application in the yogurt. So in the UNSOED, I see that the Professor Ripda, she also focus on some like yogurt research. Maybe she think about application of this in the research. Is that like maybe involved in application in yogurt? Okay, so we can replace some gelatin. They can increase for the texture of the yogurt, but also can replace by the starch. And the optimization of process using the starch and what kind of starch is a major contribution into the texture of the yogurt. Okay, so this one like 0% of fat, and this one 1% of the fat involved in the yogurt. And we see that like we can apply in here. They can apply for cross-linked starch and some other like gelling agent they can apply in. Okay, so maybe next few slides involved in the gluten-free. So why gluten-free? That involved in the celiac disease, and then we need to apply for the gluten-free that normally they're contained in the wheat flours. So other health concern involved that the allergies of the gluten-containing products. So here we can apply some product. They can like re-gelatinized dry flours, or some other rice flour they can replace for wheat flour, and after that we can make pasta. This one, the product will focus on the pasta free in the gluten. So compare between the application, we see that like especially for the shear fork and in the firmness. Okay, we see that like the commercial one containing for gluten here, this one is quite low compared to commercial products, and that reason why in the conclusion so far that like gluten-free is still need much in research, so that we can replace for the normal products like containing gluten from the wheat flour. So that brings into the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your listening. And then I think that the time for answer some question for the question. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Dat, for such a comprehensive presentation. I bet there will be so many questions for today's discussion. So for the first session, if there's any participant who wants to ask a question, might raise hands or write down the question in the chat box.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So sorry.
So maybe okay, I've got 3 participants for the first session.
Yeah. So please, so can you please write the question so you can read the question so I can answer? Yeah.
Okay. Maybe Mr. David, you may ask the question or directly, maybe.
Yeah. So I encourage for you ask the question directly so that I can understand and then I can answer your question well.
Okay. Okay. Mr. David.
Okay. Can you hear me, Mr. Dat? Or yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dat, about the awesome topic of this section. My name is David. I'm from undergraduate magister degree of food science. Yeah. I wanna ask about the sensory characteristic of product that use trans fat free. You have mentioned about adding flavoring agent. It is still acceptable with the consumer preference. And how about the regulation of adding this flavoring or seasoning agent?
In the question, you mean add like the seasoning?
Seasoning or flavoring agent.
Okay, so
when you adding the trans fat free, yeah, you mentioned about adding flavoring agent. This is the disadvantage of trans fat free maybe. So you have mentioned about adding flavoring agent. It is acceptable with the consumer preference. And how about the regulation of adding this flavoring or seasoning agent?
Right. So
thank you.
Yeah. So the problem is when we try to improve the product, we're using some like the new techniques in the developing of the new products. Okay. So some the off flavors may be available in our food products. Okay. And that reason why. So the one recommendation that we can add the flavors. Okay. So the stronger flavor they can acceptable by the customer, but also they can meet the requirements of the food ingredients requirements. So that we can apply in. So normally that the flavors and everything they just add into the food ingredient standard, or maybe they meet the food additive standard. So that within the limit we can apply in. Yeah, but the thing is you need to do the research into the how the acceptance of the customer. So it means that we cannot put without any research, so that maybe lead to the rejection by the customer. Yeah. Thank you, David.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dat.
Any other question, please?
Okay, next question maybe from Miss Mazaya Camilla.
Yeah.
You may ask.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
My name is Mazaya Camilla. I'm from Department of Food and Technology at first semester on Faculty of Agriculture, Universitas Jenderal Soedirman. I have a question, Dr. Dat.
Yes, please.
It is about using Himalayan salt instead of kosher salt or cooking salt in our daily diet. I heard about Himalayan salt can replacing the cooking salt for less sodium. Because and using Himalayan salt, no, I mean, what are the contents of Himalayan salt that difference about make it different with kosher salt or cooking salt.
Okay.
That's from me. Thank you, sir.
All right. So you mentioned about Himalayan sauce. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that's interesting. So that the salt with the like the bright pink color, right? So yeah, that's interesting. So that actually salt is sodium chloride. So any salt that also sodium chloride. So Himalayan salt also sodium chloride. Okay, but the composition may be a little bit different. So they can be affected by the mineral, and some other mineral maybe affect the colors. And so that like maybe in the general concept, salt is salt. It means that maybe they originate from other different places, but then they still contribute into the same physiological aspect of the nutrition that called for the high blood pressure. So that like we try to reduce the sodium in there. All right. So that's the key concept. It's not regardless where they come from. Is it okay? Like Miss Maria?
Can I ask one again?
Sure.
One more. But Himalayan salt is apa ya? Can help us to maybe reducing sodium is yes, but helping us to losing weight or losing mass of our body in our deficit calories. And that's what are the what are the really difference of it with kosher salt in our diet on reducing mass of our body in losing weight, I mean.
All right. So yeah, that's good to asking that. Okay, so that's the reason why we here and sharing experience. So I just recommend you that any involved in like weight reducing, that involved in energy, So it means that involved in macromolecule intake and especially in the carbohydrates. All right. So we control that rather than like we control some other micronutrients like sodium. So that like any involved in, they need to link by the scientific evidence. So the major evidence they confirm that like the total energy intake that involved in the weight loss, rather than like like micronutrients like the Himalayan salt. Okay, but that's interesting. That like topic you think that okay, but like later on if you can find that like in the Himalayan salt, they may have like some other components that they have very specific in inhibition of like absorption of the calories, example, that may be like, we can confirm for weight reduction. But from so far from now is it's not confirmed that evidence, yes. Yeah. So it's not effect onto weight loss. It's my opinion, yes.
Okay, thank you for the answer, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much for asking.
Maybe next from Miss Firda Maulia. You want to ask the question?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Dr. Dat. My name is Firda Maulia Iseli. I am an undergraduate technology student. So I would like to ask, I'm a type of person that really love to consume like cookies or cakes, and it contains a lot of trans fat. So if we already consumed a lot of trans fat, is there any way to prevent or reduce the bad side of the trans fat in our body? Thank you.
All right. So yeah, that's a long process because that's the physiological effects of the trans fats in the long term. So that if we already consume, it means that like as soon as possible, we need to reduce the trans fats and or eliminate the trans fats from the diet. So that's the reason why it's not only in the urgent matter in our country, but also like globally, it means that like we reduce the trans fat as soon as possible. And then we try to increase because the trans fat, they can increase in the cholesterol, bad cholesterol, right? And that may be later on that involved in the consumption of some fiber that involved in the vegetable and fruit, that less sugar fruit and some vegetable, they can make some correction regarding to high cholesterol in the blood, so that we can increase for the good cholesterol from the high density lipoprotein, and then we can reduce for the low density lipoproteins that caused by the trans fat increasing over the past years. So yeah, so far right now you can focus on reduce in the trans fat first, and after that you can increase in the consumption of the fiber from fruit and vegetables. Right.
Okay, thank you for the answer, Dr.
Yeah, thank you very much for asking.
Okay, maybe we still have more time if there's any more participants who want to ask.
Yes, please ask. Okay, so glad to have the opportunity to have a chance to discuss. So please ask. Okay, any points. Okay, regarding to what you think that in diet and what you think that confirmed by the scientific evidence. So the nutrition is not the telltale stories. Mean that not people tell another people, but we think about scientific evidence behind that.
Maybe if there's no question from other participants, may I ask for a question?
Of course.
Okay. So I have read several articles that say prevalences of diabetes type 2 in Indonesia is increasing by 8.5% in 2018, which means it also reducing the chances of life by 5 until 10 years for most people in Indonesia. So do you see any correlation between how growing countries or developing countries sees the healthy foods as or choosing healthy foods as their diets? Because I see that most people here in Indonesia place the price of the food product as their top priority of why they choose to consume several products. I think I want to see your point of view in this, and how do you see this in your country?
Okay, so yeah, thank you very much. So the diabetic problems, the prevalence also not only in your country but also in Vietnam is growing. So when I do my research in 2014, so that the prevalence in Vietnam already more than 10% of adults they got a problem. So and Indonesia also a problem. So the thing is that involved in the major correlate to the diabetic is that involved in the body weight. Yeah, the body weight. It means that we think that our Asian maybe control for the BMI is less than 25, but actually it's not like that. Okay, so for the Asian countries like the Vietnamese and the Indonesians and maybe Chinese and some Japanese, even the BMI is around 23 is that a problem. So they can develop for the conduct the concept of glucose intolerance. That already pre-diabetic. So if we keep our diet very high in the carbohydrate, especially from the rice. So I know that we love rice, but then it's too much, and then the body weight should be about increase. And then if over 23 and long term, example 10 years or 15 years. So when we reach the age of 40 or more, maybe 45, and then they can develop for the type 2 diabetes. That's the reason why. So regarding to choosing the food choice, it's not only about the food price and premiums, but also about the balance in the diet. So it means that when we are asking the people to reduce the energy, everything that involved into energy. So if we asking reducing energy, it's not mean that we asking the people consume less food. Okay. So the thing is we need to using the knowledge regarding to nutrition. So we can select the food that very similar in the amount, but less energy. Example, we can choose some type of the food product, example containing higher of the carbohydrate, we can reduce by some others. So it's mean not about the price, not about premiums, but about the food choice and about how to control the diet. For every of us, even we have money or we don't have money, we can choose the healthy diet. And then the way of the control of healthy diet is much more important than the premium rice.
Okay, thank you for a comprehensive answer. Thank you so much. Maybe for other participants, if there's more question.
I'm sorry, I'm not noticed the chat box during my presentation. So please,
Oh yeah.
yeah, please ask. Okay, don't worry. So we could go like sometimes because like we have few minutes left.
Okay. Maybe for all the participants, you might use the chat box to do the presentation.
Yeah,
Yes.
any of you can type in there, and they can answer you through the chat box.
Yes. Okay.
Any questions? Don't be shy. So previously, actually, I had like several Indonesian students with me. They came to my university and they joined several courses for about 3 to 4 months. And during that, I give some lecture for those Indonesian students. They're from other university and not from your university, but maybe in the future. And if you are interested in the topic regarding to like, involved in the food science and technology, so we have the program here you can take in English and then you can fulfill for requirement if you've been here and join some short course as well. All right, sorry, Miss Sarah, so I not noticed that. I hope that like not too long for my presentation. It's long, but like not too much.
Excuse me.
Yes.
May I? Yes, it is. I'm sorry. It is many students in the undergraduate. I think it is interesting when you inform us regarding the possibility to do the exchange or internship in Nong Lam University. Could you please inform to the students briefly about Nong Lam University, Dr. Dat?
Yeah.
And about the program for the undergraduate student in English program. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So in the faculty of the we call that chemical engineering and food technology, we have the programs we call that advanced program in food technology on the courses taught by English. So it means that like if students you got like a certain level of English and you can like confident in joining a lecture in our university, and so that like we think about like the student exchange. In the past already did that. Okay, so I think that like currently we also can do that. The first thing is we already we need to sign the MOU, and this step already done by the 2 universities. So that's very good. And later on, if you have like any student need to have the exchange, so I think that they got 1 people, maybe Dr. Control, involved in making the list of the student and select for the student. And after that, send to our dean. So, and our dean confirm what course that involved in teaching in that period. And your student can choose what course that they can join. So that like, like that the evaluation also they can be a part of graduation in UNSOED, which means that you can apply the very comparative courses so that they can prepare, you can apply in. So that like in our university, we have like, we call that on-campus accommodation right now. So that like suitable for international students. And we have a very friendly students that from advanced program, we can take care of the student here. So a group of 5 or 10 students from Indonesia is not a problem. So that like, I think that like university should have like, the program. So that like offer some like short course, we call that like scholarship example for the excellent student. They can join in the program so that they can share some courses between our faculty and from the agriculture department of agriculture in UNSOED. Yeah. Yeah. So if you need to clarify more details, so please ask.
Yes. Thank you for the information, Dr. Dat. Yeah. I will encourage the students to do that.
Yeah. Next time you come here and give lecture, so you can go with your student.
I hope so. Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe Dr. Dat, there's a question in the chat box. I will try to translate to you since
Yes, please.
question is in Indonesian. So this question is from Ms. Rumaisha. The question is, what should we do as a food technology student to contribute more in the technology development regarding food technology in the future?
Okay, pardon me, can you repeat the question once again, please? Thank you.
What should we do as a food technology student to contribute in food technology development in the future?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a general question. So, but also a very interesting question. So, for the students, even like the programs, we already got like, you know, like program learning outcomes that focus on the needs from the industry, but also student, like the learner, you also can update yourself the skill that required for the industry. And so that like you can fulfill the requirement from industry. And then like when you graduate, you can directly contribute to the industry. And some of the information maybe industry did not capture, and that you can bring from your knowledge from your university to the industry. And that's the way that you can contribute significantly for your companies or maybe from the food industry. So that like, so my message is very simple. So it's not like, you know, like only about the programs. So don't limit within the course. So try yourself to develop your skills and also apply your knowledge. So that like you think that's maybe later on you can useful for the industry, and you please learn that. Okay, so don't limit within the programs. So that's the reason why they can narrow the gap between the requirement from the industry and then the graduation from the university. Yeah, it's a matter.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Romaisha. How about the answer? Is it okay for you, or you want to ask furthermore? Okay, okay. I think there's Ms. Romaisha has say it's clear for her. Maybe another question from the audience.
Yes, please.
Yes, we still have approximately 15 minutes left. So
yeah, that's plenty of time. So
yes,
ask.
let's try for the discussion.
Yes.
So for the participant.
So if don't worry, you can leave in the chat box, and we have the interpreter here.
Yes. If you have any trouble to translate it, you might ask in the chat box in Indonesian, and then I will help you to translate it into English.
So don't be shy.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay, Miss Mazaya. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for asking question more.
Yeah, no worries. So.
Sure. Maybe it's a subjective question, but I wonder if a difference about shortening or mentega putih, we call it mentega putih shortening, and butter or butter margarine, because I used to be a baker, a cookie baker especially, and for me shortening is cheaper than butter margarine or margarine. So I think I can use shortening for replacing the butter margarine, but I don't know, does shortening is will make the baker goods be good enough like butter margarine or not? I don't know the difference about shortening and butter margarine at a bakery, so I ask you about that. Sure.
Sure. Okay. So the butter is actually they make from the natural product of the milk fat. Okay, from the milk, that butter. And the butter actually, they got like properties of softening properties. And that reason why sometimes we call them the softening as well. So that like, but that the natural one, as I mentioned to you, that like they already got like some of the trans fats in there. Okay. And another one in margarines that they completely from the vegetable oils. And then they after process, we're going to hydrogenation. They add more hydrogens in the oil, so make more saturated. But they got a lot of trans fats. Okay, so margarine is actually more trans fats than butter. All right. So the softening is the properties that we wish to have not only in the cookies but also maybe in other products. Example like in the chips, French fries. So that like when you frying the French fries, so they become like even like become cooling down, but they're not like soft in the texture. That because of the softening properties. All right, and then in cookies, we are a lot of research try to replace the butter. All right, but seem it possible because like when the texture of the cookies that like when you bite, they directly and softly broken down. That because that like in short time, softening. Just mean that like the texture is very delicate for the butter, and that reason why it's hard to replace. So that if you can replace by some research, okay, it means that you can replace it not too much at the first time, but you can replace by a certain percentage, and after that you can like more significant for the industry. All right, so that like that reason why. So even like simple product you can do at home, you can replace by some domestic cooking, like making some like baking product like the cookies. You also can learn yourself, all right, about the using of like some replacement of the softening and butter into healthier products like cookies and some biscuits. Okay, right? Is it clear for you, Maria?
Yes, it answered me. Thank you, Sir.
You're welcome.
Participants, maybe? If there is no question, I would like to ask again.
Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah.
The question is, I have read your resume before, and it said that you are also contributes in industrial both internationally and also in Vietnam. So I would like to ask, how about the mass production of healthy food product in Vietnam? I mean, in Indonesia, here we have several healthy food products options for people, but somehow it is not really reachable through all people in Indonesia. So I think it is still a great challenge for industrial to actually produce healthy food products and actually to make them really reachable for all the people in the country. So I would like to ask your opinion regarding this, especially in your country.
Yes. So as I mentioned before, it's all about food choice, and then like about the understanding of the food of the consumer. So in the US and in other European countries, actually the industries, they change because of the request from the customer. So the customer is, if they think that product is not safety, not healthy, so they not use that product. So the industry, they will lose the cost, they will lose the incomes. And so that's the reason why they need to follow the request from the customer, and that like they conform by the scientific. So it means that the customer like from US and from Europe, they're already very sensitive to information. So the information regarding to what is the healthy food is. So in Vietnam and in some other Asian countries, maybe in the same situation in Indonesia, that like the recognition of the healthy actually is not like in the minds of the consumer. And so that like it also hard for the industry because it's just a small group of people and they request for change of products. So the industry, they will consider whether they change or not change. Even if they change, it's not significant. Okay, if they lost that group of people of the consumer, it's not significant in contributing to the final incomes of the industry. So that like if more people are maybe involved in like nutritional education of the population, so more people involved in the recognize of the healthy food, and in that case, not only in your country but also in my country as well, they will change totally. But so far, I say that in my country, it not changed much, because when I've been to supermarket and I see many people choosing the milk, maybe they're choosing the oil, and they ask the reason why they choose that, and they just choose for they don't have knowledge regarding to nutrition, so they don't care much about what happened, the creams, condensed creams and condensed milk.
Yes.
Cream is now is cheaper actually, but then like a lot of trans fats in there, and the industry, like sometimes they don't care much about that like problem, and no one complains about that. Okay, and that reason why, so that like they not change. So if a lot of us, they say, okay, no condensed creams, and so that they need to change back into the milk, condensed milk. Okay, that's the story about my countries. Yeah. So everything about again about the perception of the healthy food. Okay, so I think that like at least for the technologies, like a student from the food science, they need to be very comprehensive on the concept, so that like they can like later on they can contribute into the industry. It's not only about like about the food products, but also about like society, how to contribute into the public health.
Yes.
So I think see more question there.
Yes, there's also a question from Mr. Maisha, but first of all, I would like to give a feedback, because I also have experienced a couple years later that a couple years before that I purposely changed my milk preference from dairy milk into almond or soy, but somehow it doesn't give me the same pleasure as how I usually consume milk products. So basically, for someone as me who understand the benefits from using non-dairy milks, it is also sometimes not preferable because of the taste, the flavor. Because sometimes most products, most non-dairy products in my country, especially, have a certain off flavor or maybe distinct flavor that sometimes it is not really acceptable for most people. I think that's also the problem of using dairy milk replacement.
Sure, that reason why like we still need like like the food development by the industry. So that like they need to collect the feedback from the consumers. So that like as I mentioned, that like, some people just think that make the solution from the grains or the nuts, but they not care about appearance, nutritional aspect, and also the consistency. So you can make like the milk as similar as dairy milk as possible, and then you can like narrow the gap between the consumer requirements. Otherwise, they lead to rejection. Okay, and then like less people consume for the non-dairy milk, and then like the industry is think, okay, it's not significant and maybe not effective. But the thing is, we need, and not only from yes, as a consumer, like we already recognize for the healthy problem, but also like we are pay the money, so we can request for the taste and the product property, example like sensory quality. So that like the industry need to understand about that, and that developed the product should be narrow for the consumer requirements.
Sure. Okay. I think it's clear for me for the question. Maybe we should move on to the next question in the chat box. There's a question again from Ms. Romaisha. This question regarding vitamin A fortification in oil products. So the source of the vitamin A is usually from what products, and also is there any more fortification methods to do an enrichment to food products?
Okay, so the vitamin A actually is not only from the animal products, but also from like the plants, especially for the raw vitamins, that the beta carotenes, the compound. So that the beta-carotene actually they can convert into retinal, that one precursor from the vitamin A. So vitamin A they are available in the retinol, retinans, and retinoic acid. So in the food products, they are available in animal food and also in the plant food. So the message is that like we just no need to drink the fortified milk with the vitamin A, but eat more colors. Any high intensity color fruit and vegetables, they contain certain amount of the vitamin A that in form of the beta carotene. So that like after consumption, they can convert into vitamin A for absorption. So that like that's the way that you can enrich from your diet. So in Vietnam, we have like some products that also contain a lot of like it's not only about carrots, but also about from gut fruit. Okay, that like we research quite a lot in our university. They contain quite a lot of vitamin A in form of like beta carotene.
Maybe Mr. Maisha, is that clear enough for you? Okay. Okay. Thank you. She said clear already. And there's also a question from one of our lecturer, Mrs. Pepita Haryanti. The question is regarding the formulation of trans fatty acid. What are the risks of using medium chain fatty acids such as coconut oil for the formation of trans fatty acid? It is also high risk or less risk compared to long chain fatty acid. Thank you. She also said sorry for not asking you directly.
All right. Okay, thank you very much for interesting. So this one more deep in the technical thing. Okay, so yes, we know that like the medium chains and short chain fatty acids actually they more health benefits compared to the long chain saturated fatty acid, and but they already confirm very clear that like like the trans fatty acid that they form during the hydrogenation. That should be the problem for the health problems. And of course, if the trans fast, but the longer in the change length, it should be more risk for compared to the like medium chains fatty acid. So the way that I think that because they link between the physiological of absorption. So for the medium chains of the fatty acid, actually after be digested, they already absorb directly into the bloodstream. They not go to lymphatic system. So where they be into the blood system, they go to the liver, where the liver can metabolize them into the products that they cannot metabolize products that less risky for the health. Where the long chain fatty acid after absorption, they go directly into the cyclomicron, that the lipoprotein, and they go directly into other organs, and they travel around the artery walls, artery of the blood, and then they can cause for the problem with the become thicker of the artery walls, and they can lead to higher risk in the heart disease compared to medium chain fatty acid. Is that my point? Yeah. From the Pepita Haryanti. Is it okay? So is it clear for my answer? So or you need to further clarification?
So, okay.
Yeah, medium chains. Okay, medium chain fatty acid that also like in the urgence of the research regarding to fat and oil. Okay, can you have some more questions?
Okay, maybe we still have time for one question.
I have a question actually. May I?
Yes, Mas Fatih.
Okay. Okay, for Dr. Tien, I have a question for you. In the beginning, on your presentation, you explained well about trans fat and mentioning about the harm of consuming trans fat. The question is, why do the people still use ingredient for food that contain trans fat, whereas they know it's harmful for body? The question in otherwise, is there any advantage from using or consuming a trans fat?
All right. So yes, that's an interesting question. Okay. So as I mentioned, that like because the trans fats, they have their own properties that are beneficial for the industry application. The firstly, they are cheaper, easier to apply, and also they give the food with the characteristic that the consumer they love it. All right. So when we try to replace the trans fats with the trans fat free products, so the properties of the new food actually not as similar as before, and that leads to some rejection from the consumer, right? So sometimes they mention that like the flavor, sometimes they difficult to have like the texture that previously. So they consume the cookies, not like the cookie that previously made by the same company, all right? And that's the reason why they can lead to some rejection in the buying the products. And that's the first reason. The second reason is that like the change in the industry is not significant. So that like it less the products for a few products for the consumer they can choose. So that like, you know, they because like very limit of the industry, they change into the trans fat free. So that like the consumer, they also every time they deal with like a lot of abundance of the trans fat containing products. And that is why they most likely they will choose the trans fat containing products. Okay. So similar situation in Vietnam. If we know that the problem, but we try to select.
Badannya sakit.
Is it? May I continue? Is it okay, right?
Yeah, you might continue, I think.
Yeah, maybe someone unmute the microphone. Yeah, and then you know, like if we have more selection, and then we can choose better. But right now is very quite limited in the food choice, and so that like the consumer is still in like our countries, like in Indonesia and in Vietnam. We also like if we wish to select some food like trans fat free, it's really hard to find the products. That's the situation. But in US and some other countries, more than 40 countries I mentioned in the WHO report, they already got the regulation for the all industries reduce in the trans fat and make the trans fat free. So Thailand and Singapore, they already joined that, and that's a good for us to learn in the future. Is it okay for you, Fatih?
Okay, it's totally clear. Thank you, Dr.
Yeah.
I think maybe another one question.
Yeah, one more please. Yeah. So any academic still here, you can ask question, and also we can connect for the future collaboration in research.
Okay.
All right. It seems that no more question.
Okay, I think there's no question. I think it's already clear enough for all the participants. Before we end our discussion, I would like to give the closing statement for today's discussion. As you have already explained to all of us regarding your all comprehensive presentation regarding health food trends in internationally, both in Vietnam and Indonesia, I think that there is also several connection, and also we still have to also connect the dots between how the market needs and also the demands of the health foods itself. So I think this is still challenging, especially for all of us students to do researchers, and also for our thesis regarding health foods product development. So this is really an open opportunity for all of us, maybe not only for lecturer but also for students like us. Okay. Yeah. Maybe if there is no other. Okay. Mr. Dat, I think.
Gimana? Silahkan. Oh, nggak apa-apa, mau di sini, enak sini sih.
Dr. Chandra.
Mr. Chandra. Sorry. Okay. Maybe Dr. Dat, you might give your closing statement for the presentation today.
Okay, so thank you very much for your very interesting discussion session. So in general, for the requirements of the food industry to develop for the new food products that are healthy for the population, that's very important for not only for Indonesia but also for all of us, so including Vietnam as well. But we think today that like the key points that maybe the trends that like we already behind, like what I can see that like we behind some other countries, example in the region, example like Thailand and Singapore. So that maybe that the perception from the healthy food that focus on like the trans fat free or less salt, or maybe involved in like plant-based milk or some other product like gluten free. Maybe not in the mind of the industry yet. But as the food technologists, later on, you guys students, you can share your experience to the industry. And so that like we can like make the significant contribution, and not only from our study, but also from the knowledge where we can contribute into the public health to improve for the public health of the society of the Vietnam and of the Indonesia. So that like we welcome you guys later on if you have got the chance to join the student exchange in Vietnam, and we and students here welcome you. So thank you very much for joining the online discussion this morning regarding to the healthy food development. Though it's very short, but then like we have a good chance to have a very interesting discussion with you and meet some academic staff from the faculty. And thank you very much for very professional in the organization of the section. So this one is not very popular from our faculty when organizing the online lecture like this. But that also that the way later we can share experience. So later on maybe I will ask my faculty to organize several like the online guest lecture like this from your university, and then we can share the experience more further in the food science and technologies. Thank you very much, all of you, and hope you have a good health. Okay, regarding to like choosing the good diet, and be well as the food technologist later. So contribute much in the field of the food science and technology. Thank you very much once again.
Okay, thank you.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih kembali, Dr. Dat. Okay, maybe that's the end of our discussion today. Thank you for all the participants for a great discussion today, and also for our lecturer. After this, I will give the time back to Fatih. Fatih, sorry, you still have to unmute your microphone.
Yeah, thank you for telling me. Okay, again, I would like to thank you, Dr. Det, for the knowledge. There was such an amazing material for me, also for the attendees too. As the form of our appreciation, we have prepared a certificate for you, Dr. Det. I hope all things that you've been delivered just now can be something useful for us. Maybe I will share screen the certificate. Wait.
All
Okay.
right. Thank you very much.
Okay, is it visible?
Yes, I saw it.
Okay.
Very nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tien, for coming today. It's such an amazing chance for us to accept the material from you. And yeah, all right. I think that's all for our agenda today. I would like to thank you for the attendees too who has spent your time for joining us in the public lecture. We appreciate you a lot for being here, and me as the master of ceremony today's event want to say sorry if there is any mistake from us. I think that's all. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Yeah, thank you very much for all attendees and organizers for this session. Thank you very much for Fatih and Saraya. So very good. And special thank to Dr. Control for his connection and organizing for this session. And thank you very much. So we hope that through these activity and later on we have a better collaboration in the not only in the research but also in the education for the student that bring the benefits to our students. So we hope we have some other activities later in the future. Thank you very much
Okay.
for all of you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dat. Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Dan.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much. Okay, so I stop my screen now. Thanks.
Yes. Terima kasih semuanya. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum.
Terima kasih kembali, Pak.
Waalaikumsalam. Terima kasih.